Securing a grade 7 plus on Language Paper 2, question 2. Okay, so let's have a look at a typical question 2 that appears on this paper. What do you learn about the differences between the train? Summarise these differences. And this is an 8-mark question. So if we look at the question first, let's just see some key words. We've got differences. We've got trains. We've got learn, which means there'll have to be some inference there. What do you learn? So we'd expect to see words like this suggests, this reveals, this indicates, and also this idea of summarising. So providing an overall picture from what you've read. It's an 8-marker, so you'd spend about 15 minutes on it, and it really isn't difficult to get a mark of 6, 7 or 8 on this question, which would keep you on track for a grade 7, 8 or 9. So where do students go wrong then? Well, overwhelmingly, what goes wrong on this question is that students talk about the writer's attitude, the writer's feelings, the writer's viewpoint, where the focus is almost always concrete. For example, we had differences in the surfboards in 2018, boats in 2019, and trains in 2023. And it's this year where students overwhelmingly focused on what the writer was thinking and feeling. That's question 4. You cannot mix them up. And of course, if you focused on writer's feelings, the mark was capped at 4 out of 8, which wouldn't be a good score at the top end. You've also got to ignore language on this question. It's not a language question. It's not a zoom in on words and talking about nouns and adjectives and similes, and far too often students fall into the trap of talking about language on this question. And it's a pretty straightforward question, really. You'll see an answer here that is quite short, but it gets 5 out of 8. Now, 5 out of 8 is a good score, yeah, but we're looking at trying to get a score of 6, 7 or 8 today. So let's just have a quick look at what you've got to do to get a 5. In source A, the train was more private and comforting. This can be inferred from the quotation, wandered along the train to my compartment, undressed and got into my bed. This suggests the train is quite big and developed for long journeys to make it more of a relaxed environment. So that first paragraph is some understanding, yeah? They are talking about it being more private, they've got quotation, they've got an inference, but it isn't really clear. It's about 4 out of 8. On the contrary, in source B, so here's the difference, the train is presented as uncomfortable. This can be seen when the train is described as a peculiar construction back to back. The one we were in had 6 of these benches. This implies the train was cramped and designed only for travel, and the comfort of the passengers wasn't considered. Now, it's that point there that gets it to 5 out of 8, because if you look at the top, it talks about the train in source A being private and comforting. I think what they meant there is comfortable, okay? And then at the end, they talk about how the train in source B didn't have that level of comfort. That's actually a clear comparison. It's what we call a like for like comparison. And so that just nudges into 5 out of 8. Now, if you're going to get a mark of 6, 7 or 8, which would keep you on a track for a grade 7 or higher, you must focus on the thing, not the writer. You've got to think about the time difference. What you read in this exam, the 2 sources will be 100 years apart. So that might have an impact on how developed one of the things in the sources is. You've got to try to use what we call judicious quotation, well chosen. In that answer we just looked at previously, the quotation is quite long. It's not always well chosen. Judicious quotation is short, sharp, integrated into your summary. You've got to use like for like differences. You can't be comparing how source A looked on the outside and then saying how source B looked on the inside. That isn't a like for like comparison. So you're looking for the mention of the same things across each source and how they're different. And you've got to offer inference. This suggests, this indicates, this reveals. But what I've said there, you've got to look for inference and you've got to develop it. So you can't say, this suggests the man was uncomfortable. You've got to say, this suggests the man was uncomfortable and wasn't able to sleep properly in the bed. It's got to be developed, okay? So, let's have a look at a top end one, okay? Now, I'm not going to read all of this, but I'm just going to try to model some of those examples. The train in source A has a bed, right? That's judicious. Quotation, just the word bed, which tells us the train was used for luxury and comfortability during the experience. There's your inference. Whereas the train in source B has no mention of beds and rather they sit on benches. So you've got judicious quotation there. To enjoy their ride, showing that the train in source B was used primarily for practicality rather than comfortability. So that's a really clear difference with judicious quotation. Inference that's developed. The train in source B has a mail van and a dining car. Again, you've got real, well-chosen, judicious quotation there, suggesting that over time, the experience of the train has improved. So again, you've got your inference. You've got your difference connected, whereas train in source B, there's no mention of any service. Talks about a little engine. Talks about it being a mythical beast. All the way through this answer, if you sit and have a good read of it, you will see those things that I talked about. Judicious quotation, like for like comparisons, inference and development. This one got a mark of 7 out of 8. Very rare to see an answer that's 8 out of 8. That's why I've used one that was 7 out of 8. But also, it's quite short and it focuses on 3 like-for-like differences. Okay, so that's what you're thinking about here. That's what you've got to focus on. A success criteria, 3 like-for-like differences, judicious quotation, inference that's developed. So, over to you now. So this is your pupil practice. Here's a typical question that you would get. Using what you have learnt from this presentation, practice the following question. Read sources A and B. What do you learn about the differences between the facilities and environment in each prison and summarise these differences? So you look at the question. The focus is differences. So you're looking for like differences. Anything to do with the facilities, what was in place, or the environment in each prison. So 3 like differences, judicious quotation, inference, and develop that inference. I would advise you just spend about 5 to 10 minutes now just trying to find your like differences. Give yourself 15 minutes max to practice that answer. Okay, judicious quotation, maybe a side and a half. That would be a good measure of an answer that was hitting perhaps into that grade 7 to 9 region. More than happy for you to have a go at this one and bring it along to me or send it on Google Classroom and I'll happily mark them for you. Thank you. You've got source B.